All right, guys. So reality-based television cable news host Brian Steltzer did a program that I found fascinating yesterday, right? In which he asked his guest, Mr. Timothy Snyder, a professor at Yale, how is it that reality-based news networks like CNN, right? People like him who claim to be based in reality, how can they fight against a undemocratic takeover of our elections in 2024 from the GOP? That is CNN's framing on that. And I want you guys to listen to this segment because this professor is going to basically call for CNN to just flat out implement left-wing propaganda and to not be fair and balanced. Take a look.
Yet he lays out one of these, exactly what you're describing, how it could all happen in 2024. It is quite unnerving. And you say there's some cowards out there that don't want to talk about it. What do folks in the reality-based media do in the coming weeks? What's your advice for the press corps?
I mean, my advice for the press corps is to drop the fair and balanced about the one party and the other party. Who cares about the parties, right? The parties aren't really the story. The story is whether we have a democracy or not. And the behavior of the parties is the actual story. I mean, so I think that the main thing we have to do, and you guys have done a lot in this direction, is to drop the pretense of American exceptionalism, drop the idea that democracy is just out there like the air we breathe, and make democracy the story itself. We had minimal excuse to be surprised by 2016. We had no excuse to be surprised by the coup attempt in 2020. And if we're not prepared for an attempt for people to take power undemocratically in 2024, then we're just at this point pathetically naive. Preparing for that and getting the facts out so that people can prepare for that and prevent it is what colleagues in journalism should be doing.
Yeah, that's the assignment. Timothy Snyder, thank you very much for being here.
All right, guys. So there you have it. There's CNN fear-mongering about how allegedly the GOP is going to try to overthrow the elections in 2024, right? That's what they're fear-mongering people about now, right? Trying to essentially continue to play off this whole January 6th thing. But, what I really found interesting about this conversation is how this guy told CNN, drop the fair and balanced, right? Don't be fair and balanced anymore. Don't worry about the whole parties thing. Just go after the GOP. That's what he's essentially saying, right? Because it's about democracy, right? And first of all, I want to say CNN was never fair and balanced. When have they ever been fair and balanced? And that's why I find it so hilarious how Brian Steltzer tries to frame this network as reality-based. Because CNN has never been based in reality, right? Ever since Trump was elected president in 2016, they spent the next 4 years basically saying that he's an illegitimate president, pushing this fake Russiagate conspiracy, right? This fake Russiagate conspiracy. Again, Democrats love talking about democracy, but where was democracy when they on a regular basis kept putting doubts in the minds of the American citizens in regards to the legitimacy of the presidency of Donald Trump? And that's what really blows my mind, how the left-wing media wants to sit on their high horse and act so high and mighty like they really care about democracy, when we've seen before in the past how if a candidate that they want to win doesn't win, they will go out of their way to try to make that election illegitimate. That's what the whole Russiagate thing was. Matter of fact, I haven't done a story on this, and I probably should have, but the Department of Justice just charged a lawyer, right, that was linked to Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign with lying to the FBI to create the impression that the Trump campaign was colluding with Russia. But did reality-based media like CNN come out here and report on that story? Hell no. Of course they didn't. Why not? Because it doesn't look good for the lie that they pushed for 4 years to try to delegitimize the presidency of Donald Trump. And then they also never want to talk about what happened in the primaries with Bernie, right, in the DNC. They never want to talk about that. Now, the progressives are mad about that. The progressives made a whole big thing about that, right? And that's what blows my mind about progressives, too, where they want to sit on their high horse. Like they weren't making claims when Bernie lost, right? But the left-wing media never wants to address that. But they want to talk about democracy. They want to talk about democracy, but these people don't want to talk about how we have a general, right, woke General Miley, who essentially subverted a duly elected president, right, the civilian leadership of the military, to try to run his own foreign policy with China, right? And the liberal media establishment is not calling for this man to resign. They're not calling for him to be court-martialed, to step down. But they want to talk to me about democracy, right? When it's apparent to them that democracy only matters when it fits what they want. That's the only time it matters. If it doesn't fit what they want, then it doesn't matter. Democracy goes out the window. That's how this stuff works. But what I also found interesting is that how reality-based media, CNN, right, people like Brian Steltzer, again, claim to be in reality, but yet he brought on another guest 5 minutes later who essentially made the argument that the $3.5 trillion social safety net expansion plan from the Democrats will essentially cost nothing. Take a look.
My number one priority would be more discussion of what's actually in the bill, as opposed to this top line figure, which itself is misleading, of $3.5 trillion. There are good ways to spend a huge sum of money. There are bad ways to spend a huge sum of money. But the kind of media coverage that we've been getting doesn't really explore whether the kinds of things that are in this bill are meritorious or not. I'd love to see more people commenting about, should we invest in childcare this way, or paid leave that way, or in climate. Instead, right. It's about the number.
And why is the number misleading? Why is that 3.5 trillion figure misleading?
Because it doesn't really represent anything. It's this weird shorthand that's been used, but in fact, the bill itself will not cost $3.5 trillion in the sense that it will be entirely or at least partly paid for. So the actual cost in terms of deficits will be smaller than that, perhaps even zero, although I think that's unlikely. And it's not even, fully spending. It's not really right to call it a $3.5 trillion spending bill because there's probably about $1 trillion of tax cuts in it, too. So it's really hard to boil down the essence of what this legislation is because it does so many things and because, they're still negotiating over the basic parameters.
Yeah, and it will be over 10 years, et cetera, et cetera. And isn't the broader point, Catherine, that because the Senate is broken and they don't create laws all year long, work on legislation all year long, they're trying to do everything at once in one big bill?
Well, it's partly what you just mentioned. It's partly that we no longer have majority rule in the Senate. So in order to get anything through a party line vote, which is, what theoretically should happen when we have unified control of government by the Democrats, they have to cram everything into this one major piece of legislation, the so-called reconciliation bill, whatever shorthand we use for it. And so it has to cover all of the bases, or at least everything that can ostensibly get pushed into a budget bill.
Right.
They have to do climate. They have to do paid leave. They have to do child care. They have to do, green energy tax credits for cars and things like that. They have to put everything into this one piece of legislation because they can't do piecemeal, regular order bills because the Senate doesn't function that way anymore. There's only...
All right, guys, there you have it. Reality-based CNN, essentially telling people that, hey, this bill costs $3.5 trillion, but, since... the rich, right? That's who they say are going to pay for it. Since the rich are paying for it, right? Since other people are paying for it, right? It doesn't cost anything, okay? Which is basically like saying, well, your car costs $12,000, but since you paid for it, then it doesn't cost anything, right? That's literally what she's saying, because she's making an argument that, well, this is going to be deficit neutral, which in my opinion is a stretch. The reason why they're saying that is because they say that after they finish increasing all the taxes on the rich, through increasing the top marginal rate for individuals, increasing the corporate tax rate, trying to increase taxes on foreign earnings for companies, there's a whole list of stuff that they're talking about increasing taxes for. They say by the time they increase all that stuff, it's going to raise, I think they said about $3 trillion. That's what they say, right? Plus other stuff. And they say, well, the other part that's left, that's going to be paid for with economic growth, right? The economy is going to grow so well because of Biden's social spending that it'll pay for itself, right? That's what they say. But again, I got questions because as this person acknowledged, the Democrats don't even really know what's in the bill because they're not finished with it, right? So how do you know if it's actually fully going to be paid for? Because you don't even know what's in the bill, right? And I also found it interesting how she tried to sell us this line that, well, it's not even 3.5 trillion in spending because 1 trillion of it or so is tax cuts, right? And when they mean by tax cuts, they really mean the child tax credit, the expansion of that, which really is just UBI for parents with children, right? That's really what it is in terms of how it's effectively being administrated. She's trying to say, well, that's not really spending. Wait, isn't the left the same people that told us that tax cuts are actually spending because it increases the deficit, right? But now she's trying to tell us that these tax cuts, the Biden tax cuts, which are really tax credits, but these Biden tax cuts, right? Oh, no. That's not new spending, right? But when the Republicans cut taxes, that's spending. Well, also at the same time, I'm trying to say that, well, $3.5 trillion in spending, the cost is zero. It doesn't really mean anything because the taxpayers are paying for it. Because the government isn't printing more money. Oh, it doesn't cost anything. It doesn't mean anything when it's being paid for by the taxpayer, right? The taxpayers are footing the bill for this, right? Everything costs something. And this is how stupid the left-wing media thinks that people are. That they can literally go out here and say, we're about to spend an unprecedented amount of money, right? $3.5 trillion in a bill, right? One single bill. Also on top of that, we got the $1.2 trillion package as well too. So we're about to spend about $5 trillion. But don't worry, it's not going to cost anything. It's all paid for, right? It's all paid for by the taxpayer, right? By the taxpayer. Don't worry about it. People making it's a big nothing burger. Big nothing burger. Again, this is full-blown propaganda for the DNC. That's what it is. It's full-blown propaganda from the DNC. And these people like Brian Steltzer will sit here and tell you that CNN is reality-based media, right? Reality-based media, a reality-based media outlet. Boy. They really think people are stupid, okay? They think people are stupid. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.